Hello, and welcome to a lecture on what may be my favorite theory from the class, which is a giant warning to you that, well, first off, it's probably complex, but also that you're going to have to really know this theory. But it's a great theory. I just happen to love it, and I actually have done some research with it where well, actually, from the initial surveys I used, designed entirely by the theory of reasoned action or theory of planned behavior, actually then went into some other experiments and published the stuff. So I happen to really like it. Anyway, so we're talking about TRA, sometimes also known as TPB. It's probably better known actually as TPB, which is the theory of planned behavior. And so in this lecture, I'll be talking about the theory of reasoned action and then helping understand when it becomes the theory of planned behavior by adding a third piece in. But so this is broken into, I'm looking at right now, 4 lectures just to make this manageable. So this is the big overview. This lecture is if you take nothing else away from the theory, take this much away from it. I mean, you'll have to know more for the class, but this is enough to get you started. So here we are with part 1. All right. So the theory of reasoned action, or theory of planned behavior, starts with this question about why do people do what they do? And those are things that we think of as being good things, like exercising or having a healthy diet, or less than good things like maybe smoking or eating too many fatty foods, right? All of these things, these topics I'm listing here, are topics that have been researched using TRA or TPB, theory of reasoned action or theory of planned behavior. Right? So why do people smoke or keep smoking, eat unhealthy foods, try illegal substances, or etc.? As you look at that list, there's got to be something on there that you do or that you don't do. Well, I guess any one of those things, I suppose you do or don't do, just by the way it is. Either you drive dangerously or you don't drive dangerously. But there's probably something on there that that you should do, like recycling, right? Or there's something that you shouldn't do, like eat unhealthy foods. I'm saying should. I mean, it's all about your own choices. But yet, right? Right? You should be doing something, or you shouldn't be doing a thing. But yet, you keep doing it. So why? Well, this theory is meant to help us understand why is it, and with that also to predict when are people actually going to engage in the behavior, when are they likely to engage the behavior. I'll talk about what I mean by that in a moment here, right? So how do we make decisions, right? So the theory of planned behavior says the way we make decisions, right? There's something, right? We think it's a good idea, but are we going to do it? And it is affected, right? That decision-making process is affected first by what we predict are the outcomes of the behavior. People can tell us certain outcomes from the behavior, but it has to do with what do we individually predict will be the outcome from the behavior, right? So you might be thinking, I'm staying in college, or if I stay in college, I expect there will be this outcome, right? Right. So that forms what's called the attitude. And that word is not totally intuitive that we think of attitude, but in this theory, attitude is what you predict will be the outcome of behavior. That's your attitude. There's also others' opinions. And others' opinions, that can be your peers, it can be people that you respect, right? But those other people's opinions form a subjective norm. So whether you keep going through college or you don't, might be in part affected by your attitude about what you think will happen when you have a college degree. It may also be affected by what other people think of you going to college. And for sometimes there is resistance. Peers or maybe family, right? They don't think that you should finish college. That's going to be a problem for them in some way. That's a real thing. And for others, for you to drop out of college would be a real problem for them. They really want to see you finish college. So that forms a subjective norm. So we have the attitude and the subjective norm. And the last piece is your own sense of control. So you think that the outcome from staying in college is really good. So that's the attitude. Subjective norm, the people whose opinion you respect, they think you should stay in college. Okay, great. Now we have, do you feel like you have like the actual ability to stay in college, right? Your sense of control, which we call perceived behavioral control, which Mercifully is abbreviated, although it gets complicated with a lot of other abbreviations here, but it's PBC, right, is your perceived behavioral control. And that is, do you feel like you're personally able to do this, to finish college in this example? And are there external factors, right, where you're like, listen, I think I have what it takes to get through college, but family demands, financial demands, these external factors are keeping me from doing it, right? Or they're not, right? You're in college so far, so that's good, right? Unless you found this lecture for free, in which case, you're welcome. Okay, so that's the sense of control, which is called perceived behavioral control. Those three elements are key. And I'm gonna be talking about those things. So those are three elements. I'm not gonna say you should go and get them tattooed on your forearm, but you could, right? So attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control. Those three factors, according to this theory, those three factors affect your intention to engage in a behavior. So I've talked about those three factors, right? And I just use this word. I just now use this word, intention. Intention leads to behavior. I intend to recycle is a pretty good measure of whether I'm going to recycle. Now, some will say it doesn't, but in this theory, technically, what it predicts or measures is intention and not actual behavior. Sometimes some of the research will do that, but often what we look at with this theory is intention. So we give somebody a survey and we measure what is their intention to recycle, what is their intention to persist through college, right? See, so those three factors, intention, in the first version of the theory of reasoned action, TRA, intention was gotten at by combining attitude and subjective norm, which I just talked about those very briefly. And I have a whole lectures coming up on these, don't worry. But intention was gotten at by combining attitude and subjective norm, which is to say, the likelihood you'll engage in a behavior, the likelihood of it is by your assessment of the outcomes of the behavior and support for the behavior. That's another way of putting it, right? That the likelihood you'll engage in it is the outcomes and the support. I'm going to keep using the actual terms here of like attitude and subjective norm, but just know those synonyms are probably pretty useful to help you understand this theory. I'm hoping they are, right? When we get to the theory of planned behavior, right, the theory of planned behavior, it adds in that perceived behavioral control, the PBC, and that says the likelihood of engaging in a behavior, right, and which is to say, not at all likely, and not engaging in a behavior, right, the likelihood of that could be very good, right? So not running through a red light, right? That it's really unlikely you're going to engage in a behavior. It's actually a good thing to not run a red light. That would be a good thing. Please don't do it, right? So likelihood in the theory of planned behavior is the combination of the outcomes and the support as well as the ability, which is the perceived behavioral control. So perceived behavioral control, PBC, you might really think of as being ability. If you can, print this out and put it up on your wall where you see it so it's the last thing you see before you close your eyes at night, the first thing in the morning, as I do, as you might imagine, right? If you can get this, hold on to this, it will help you to understand the rest of the theory, I like to think. And so that is part one.